the panel, Quantum Foundations and Exponential Outcomes. We're here to talk to you about how frontier tech is reshaping finance with collaborative innovation. Please use the room, and as you're all seated on round tables, you can innovate and collaborate together. My name's Dan Wynn. I'm co-founder and COO at Qubitra Technologies, and we're excited to be launching our new company here at Davos this week. I'm joined on the panel from the other end over there by Robin Slackhorst, who's partner and co-owner of We Trust Capital Management and also winner of the Dutch FinTech Award in his time at Simbi. Next to him is my co-founder and partner, the CEO of Qubitra Technologies, Vishal Shetty. Then we have Alex Manson, CEO of Ventures, spent his time in banking and finance, using how to use finance to better serve society, and author of the book Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gained. And right up next to me is Steve Suarez, CEO of HorizonX, general entrepreneur and founder. You'll hear from all of them in a little moment. I'd like to first of all thank Alex and to Standard Chartered Ventures for sponsoring us here in the event. They're one of our partners in funding the new entity, and also to Davos for hosting us here. I've spent much of my career in frontier technology and innovation within banking, but to do it with purpose, looking how we can better serve communities, how we can advance and to use innovation and change to better financial services. And here, what we're focused on at Qubitra and going to discuss here on the panel today is how quantum is now becoming less frontier, less marginal, less on the margins, and actually how we can drive economic benefit and purpose within financial services. I'll just pass it along the panel if everyone could introduce themselves. Over to you first, Steve.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. So Steve Suarez. I was with HSBC for 20 years. Sorry, it's getting harder, but I'm a recovering banker. Yes, it's been 20 years. And I left about 2.5 years ago. I started my own company. I do strategy consulting around innovation, AI, and quantum computing. I am also a senior advisor to many different companies, sit on the board of McKinsey, Mitsubishi, a lot of quantum computing companies, actually, some that are even in this room over here. We got, and we'll talk actually over here as well. I'm excited to be here with you. Actually, before I move on, there's one thing I want you guys to know, because all week I've been getting emails about the people who attended this. And I can tell you, if you're in this room, you must be really special, because there are so many people trying to get in this room. So you should congratulate yourself that you got a seat at the table. So well done.
Thanks, Peter.
Nothing like a bit of exclusivity. It's good. Congratulations, everyone. So as you said it, I'm Alex. I set up SC Ventures. So just provide a bit of context on SC Ventures as a general matter. I was a banker. I guess I'm still a banker, and I was a little frustrated. In fact, very frustrated with traditional banks' inability to serve clients in the way they were asking us to serve them. They were asking us to do things which I knew were technologically feasible, with data science, with blockchain was beginning to be a thing at the time, etc. So I knew it worked, but we weren't set up to do it. And it wasn't that it wasn't senior enough, it didn't have the budget. In fact, I had all the budget. It wasn't even inertia or evil people sort of not wanting to change. Mostly people want to do the right thing, even in large organizations. It was set up. It was business set up with a bit of the technology, but mostly the way we were set up. So the idea came up to set up ventures and start again. And so, long story short, we ended up, initially, obviously, our boss was not amused. Stop that. They want to change it up. A little venture, right? Don't go waste time. It's distraction. So, long story short, we ended up co-engineering, co-designing SC Ventures as a venture building platform to have a go at it, essentially, and create companies that would either prove the point that they have the right to exist by finding their own clients and finding their own funding, or would fail and disappear, and that would be fine as well. And in the process, we learned a lot, and over time, change back. That was 8 years ago with Sylvia, and doing quantum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to meet you all. I'm Vishal Shetty, co-founder and CEO of Qubitra Technologies. Super exciting week for us because we're a company launching the brand here. Thank you to SC Ventures for being core to incorporating the company and funding us through this journey. They're one of our key investors along with Fujitsu. At Qubitra Technologies, we build quantum and quantum-inspired applications for financial services. We build applications in a way that can create real-world impact today and have a map onto quantum computing as that matures. And we also develop a platform to enable collaboration, exploration, and discovery. I look forward to talking to you all a lot more about that through the course of the afternoon. Just quickly, before this, I was managing director at another quantum technology company, which became one of Europe's largest and fastest growing quantum technology firms. During my time there, I was one of the first people to join. And before that, I had a background in financial services and management consulting. For part of my life, I set up an investment fund with the former CEO of Pathways Capital. But I started my career in building algorithms for finance. And it's really, I find it quite exciting to be back into that core space where everything began. So I look forward to talking further about that.
Yeah, so I never worked in a bank. My name is Robin. I wanted to be an astronaut, so I studied aerospace engineering first. Did absolutely nothing with it. So I did an MBA afterwards, and basically with the guys there, we studied entrepreneurship and everything, and everyone wanted to build a business, but everyone started working for Unilever and Rabobank and the big corporate. So we were like, why didn't they start their own companies? And everyone left with money, basically. In that time, I'm talking 15 to 20 years ago. So we basically built a platform to fund companies. So we were one of the first equity crowdfunders. That's basically how I got into finance by accident. We IPO'd the company in the US in 2015, funded over 300, 400 companies by now. Now I'm an investor, and one of my latest ventures is a hedge fund. We help high net worth individuals, family offices with generating some alpha through active trading and algo trading as well there.
Okay, thanks everyone on the panel. I think I'm still a recovering banker as well, Steve, but I didn't want to be an astronaut. I think fine, an inventor, but then I really wanted to be and in finance, and it's great to have moved onto the startup, onto the fintech side. Finance does a lot for the world, and actually it helps frontier technologies. So what we need in quantum and other frontier technologies that have elements of deep tech is we need a little bit of funding, then we need to prove it, and that drives more funding, and that's how we get adoption. So perhaps, Michelle, we can dig in a little bit into what the vision is for Qubitra and how together we will make that happen.
Absolutely. So in my time at my previous company, what I found in the quantum ecosystem was there were a few things that weren't quite working as I thought they should, right? Firstly, there was not a lot of clarity in terms of what is the state of maturity, what are the applications we should be applying this to, where is this state we be doing now? There was that lack of clarity. There was probably insufficient collaboration in the industry. I think there's people that are competing, and there's some collaboration, but I think there's definitely room for more. And there's definitely a lack of appreciation of domain expertise within the application of frontier technologies. So those are the things that I wanted to go and address in setting up this company. So at Qubitra, what we do is three things. It's quite simple. We bring clarity to the quantum tech landscape. We drive collaboration within the industry, and we develop applications for high impact today. Those are the three things that we do. Those are the key things that we want to solve with Qubitra. We achieve this vision through two dimensions. On the first hand, we've got high performance applications. And in high performance applications, we focus very much on financial markets. In fact, we work with hedge funds like Robin's. We work very much in financial markets where we develop algo trading strategies and help create alpha using quantum and quantum inspired applications. We are also doing applications in the space of fraud detection, and where we're working with more traditional financial institutions, larger organizations as well, to try and identify trends in fraud markets, in fraudulent trends in markets. And we have a platform that enables collaboration, discovery, exploration across different types of quantum computers through the software and the hardware stack. So through the entire stack, seeing kind of how the different building blocks of the end-to-end ecosystem put together allow people to explore that.
So yeah, it's an exciting time for us to take it to market. Great, thanks, Michelle. So there's a clear theme coming through on the panel of collaboration. In fact, the two entities that funded Qubitra were Standard Chartered Ventures and Fujitsu. So you have two large organizations coming together, one really from the quantum hardware side and technology, and another one from the banking side. Collaboration is important. In a previous venture, I was unlucky enough to have 9 banks come together, and I worked across in some other ventures across multiple banks. That was pretty difficult. I'd like to just turn to Alex now to understand a little bit the thought process that you went through with Standard Chartered Ventures on choosing to fund an entity in quantum software with financial services as a target.
So the context is what I alluded to earlier, which is serving clients, coming up with use cases and applications, and ultimately reinventing what we call rewiring the DNA banking, and reinventing banking, but very specifically quantum. Why? So first, we've been playing with it for quite some time. So for about 7, 8 years, we were renting space with USRA's quantum dealer. Obviously, we were doing portfolio simulations for financial markets. We even wrote some research on it. We've been dealing with it for some time. On the back of which, we were one of very, very few banks involved in the technology, and so sure enough, hardware companies started knocking on our door, and took a very close look at some of them, and passed as an investment, which in hindsight is a monumental mistake. And the thinking then was, I'm really here to serve clients better. I'm not a deep tech investor. What do I know that A16Z doesn't know? And so it's not really my place to do this. And so I can, justify not doing it and get regretting afterwards. But the point is, while we could see the whole thing evolving from a R&D, deep tech, hardware perspective, we didn't have the applications, we didn't have the use cases that we thought we could build a viable business with, at the time. And so we kept looking at it and thinking, this is really important, it's really relevant, but how do we do this? And we had several other goals, and what we came up with is the concept of we've used in other domains as well, which is really hard to create something new all by yourself in a dark room, in a vacuum. So you need partners. You need partners to do something that you don't. It's resources, but also simply knowledge, and that's really important. So partnering was an important part. By partnering, obviously, there's a producer label that's everybody else on the platform. So instinctively, we thought it should be a platform, because that's how you're going to let the crowd decide what works, as opposed to you going in a dark room again and then trying to figure out what works. And so really the idea was to engage with a community of, like-minded people wanting to make this work, and try and come up with the use cases that we think can be viable, commercially attractive, and ultimately get us to the objective we're serving in the first place, which is requiring the DNA. So that's what we have to do.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. And I think that you mentioned a mistake from not investing. I think when you're in venture capital, you have to make a lot of mistakes. In fact, when you're in frontier technologies, you need to make a lot of mistakes. That's kind of how it works. But
it's just step 1 and step 2 mistakes, right? So there's the things you have done and really should not have done, which is the norm in the early stage, right? 99% is pretty much going to go that way. Venture building a little less that way. And then step 2, which interestingly, nobody really gives you a hard time for, right? There's no postmortem on that deal we never did. But there should be, because they are the big mistakes, as a general matter.
The missed opportunities. And I'd like to come back to it a little bit later as well on some of the other investment themes that you have within the portfolio for frontier technologies. I think I mentioned before that it's to do it with purpose. So it's disruption. We have a lot of disruption in financial services, and it's to do it with purpose. And some of the things that I've been involved with that have really transformed financial services, and I work out of the UK. We're registered in London. Mobile banking is something that's huge, that actually has empowered people globally that didn't have access to banking. I mean, that's huge. We have more and more people now that can access banking without needing to visit a branch. We've also had in the UK open banking, which is, if you talked about that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it's something crazy. The fact that banks are willing to share and connect account level data across the whole financial system. And we're really starting to see the benefits of that and technology being built on top of that. So I'd just like to open it really to the panel, just to get sort of the thoughts on the most impactful tech-enabled transformations that you've seen, and it doesn't need necessarily to relate to financial services. Want to go first, Steve?
I'll pass that. I don't know. Let me have a think of the matter.
That's his thinking.
I'll give the color on one of my heroes, actually. So Jim Simons and Renaissance Capital are really incredible pioneers in the world of finance. I think most people in this room would remember in the mid-90s, there was when IBM created a computer that beat Garry Kasparov at chess. And that was the first time a computer beat the world's best chess player at chess. Well, the person that created that application, that program at IBM, is now CEO of a company called Renaissance Technologies. They were the first ones to apply machine learning in markets. And what they did is incredible. They created 66% return annually for 30 plus years. Right? So what they did using AI and machine learning in markets is incredible. It's a great path, which I think, I'd like to endeavor to follow as an organization using a quantum lens. Using quantum and quantum-inspired technologies, it's not really been applied in markets yet. With the domain expertise we have, we can lean on the Standard Chartered as well, the technology expertise from Fujitsu, the technical expertise from them. I think we can do something special. So that's a path which has been trailblazed. We hope to follow in some footsteps in some way.
Yeah, from my end, that's more on the end user. I like these neobanks that are doing some really good stuff. I use Revolut as a very good example. Anything that makes that process easy, frictionless, and being able to transact is fantastic. So I use big banks and Standard Chartered, HSBC, but these guys are making it incredibly easy. You can get into different asset class, you can trade stocks, and it's all from the app. And then so a lot of these, do you guys know what the biggest branch in the world is? The biggest branch in the world. It's sitting in your pocket. That's the biggest branch in the world. And being able to transact. Imagine the people before us that actually had to go to an ATM, had to go talk to a teller. The fact that you can transact and move the amount of money that you move today, all electronically, to me, that's pretty cool. I can pay mortgages, I can buy stock, I can do it. I'm anywhere in the world that I'm sitting. So that's kind of my.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
I can build on that. First I agree. So, and by the way, we built two digital banks, one in Hong Kong, one in Singapore. To the best of my knowledge, they're still the fastest growing digital banks in emerging markets for sure. And a lot of integrated services into people's lives. And so embedded finance is part of this, and financial inclusion obviously is derived from it. So that's one thing. But also in supply chains, we do trade financing, we do B2B e-commerce, and other business services. That's another thing. We do digital assets, we do crypto custody, we do crypto trading, we do tokenization, we just announced our brokerage in the digital asset space, and managing its assets in a DeFi environment. That's another thing. And so we could ask someone responsible to have to do that. And the answer is actually everything. These three conversations seem separate and distinct. They're one and the same conversation. So I take over consumer financing assets from the main bank, grow and scale that origination with a view to distribute it, tokenize it, and set it in a DeFi environment to an investor. Custody has to be separate and distinct. The market trading platform, you have to trading and the coins that enable the transaction can be done in a separate manner. And now I can start deploying balance sheet against it in a tokenized form. Obviously, I've done none of that because it's all an AI agent. And we go to AI conferences and classes conferences, not realizing to what extent it is exactly the same conversation and how intertwined the two conversations are. Is quantum computing intertwined with AI? Oh, yes. Do you have a view on whether we have a real estate bubble forming as it relates to AI? But data centers, Well, it depends on the online computing and the access. So the point I'm trying to make is you build small companies and ultimately they become part of an ecosystem. You structure that ecosystem in separate distinct themes, but ultimately they converge into building the bits and pieces of what it will take to operate tomorrow. Banking and everything else.
It's quite amazing to see those discrete parts that have been developed over many years suddenly becoming part of mainstream and fully integrated, or integrating into a financial system. So financial services, it was evolving. Banks have always been a key foundational part, but as Steve mentioned, with Revolut and with neobanks, but other infrastructure is now in your pocket, and it continues to evolve with AI. Having AI doing credit checks and things like that. And we'll talk a minute about where quantum is going to fit in. But let's just go to.
The end user application, it always requires certain conditions, right? And on my own experience, what is a crowdfunding platform? It's simply a website where you show a video, some text, and you have a pay button, But in 2007, 2008, Facebook was relatively small still then. LinkedIn was just growing. So the social layer needed to be built first for us in order to have an effective crowdfunding platform. And we need to be able to pay efficiently online in order for people to do the investment on an online platform. So YouTube was still growing really fast, and so video encryption and stuff like that for the internet needed to be there to convey your pitch. And I think for quantum, it's going to be also like one of the conditions to enhance a lot of user experiences in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Robin. Okay, so now it's time to start using your imagination, because if we look back, we had the internet. We wouldn't have had smartphones without the internet. We wouldn't have had banking apps and mobile banking without smartphones. But they took years, it's 10, 15, 20 years for all of that to happen. We've talked about some of those key innovations. So what's coming next? Where is quantum going to hit finance? What is the one killer app from each of you that we think is going to make a difference? I've got this mic and I'm speaking, so I'll go first. I think we've in recent times there's been some big headlines around fraud and fraud detection. This is for me a key use of where quantum can improve things, and the area that we're working on at Qubitra is trying to make that happen. And it's not it's the factor of magnitude. So it's not to improve it slightly. It's got to be massive. It's got to be a huge multiple for it to be economically beneficial. And for me personally, I think that's where we can really make a difference across the whole industry. So we'll take volunteers whose imagination is working hard.
I'm going to truly come up with a killer app for finance in quantum, and it's really around how it's going to kill security, right? So if you guys have heard of Shor's algorithm, it's an algorithm that can do factoring big, large numbers, and all of your encryption is using RSA, or elliptical curve encryption. And with a strong enough quantum computer, all your security is at jeopardy. And so that's the immediate soon that we need to focus on as far as protecting data and making sure that your data is protected. So if you look at it, I look at it in 3 horizons, right? So horizon 1 is really about how do we protect people's data and use the technology to fight against the rise of quantum. There's this thing about harvest now, decrypt later. Because storage is so cheap, your data can be taken in transit and stored. And you might think, hey, they have my data, that'll be in 10 years. Imagine if I can go back to any of your data 10 years ago and being able to read what you have. And you'd have some sensitive things there. And then people talk about Q-Day. And Q-Day is the day that quantum will break security. And the reality is you don't need to worry about Q-Day because your data is already sensitive data, could be taken right now and could be stored today. And Q-Day, if you're like, I'll wait till Q-Day happens. If you have a technology, let's just say you had the superpower of being invisible, would you tell anybody that you can be invisible? No, right? Because the power comes in that I'm the only one that knows and I can be invisible. So if I have the ability to break your encryption and get access to your data, it's really powerful for me not to let you know. So you will never know once somebody, state actor, organization, will be able to break your data. So that's why for me, the immediate killer app is finding ways to protect your data through PQC, post-quantum cryptography, and ensuring you can protect that. There's a lot of, so it's more defensive now, but there is an offensive move.
Okay, so talking about defense and offense, so I tend to get quite excited and to be thinking more about growth than worrying. So we do have the post quantum cryptography to talk about. But what are the killer apps that will drive the growth, that will drive that enablement and empowerment in financial services?
So there's not in the quantum world. There's not a huge amount of consensus on a lot of things in the scientific community in particular. But one thing is relatively scientists are relatively aligned on one thing, and that is the use of quantum computing to understand the quantum mechanics and quantum physics of the body and of the world around us. Right? The use of quantum computing is because it can basically handle the complexity that comes with the craziness of the exponential complexity that comes with quantum systems and quantum physics around us. Now, I think that same concept can be applied to managing the complexity of markets, and how markets themselves are these massively interconnected systems, how one part has multiple ripple effects and different things kind of flow together. So using quantum computing to address that is quite a powerful use case that we do. Some might ask that while the hardware is not mature yet, what are we doing in this space, right? So what we use quantum-inspired methods to address this. So which means applications, algorithms that run on conventional compute today, but they map onto quantum compute as the hardware matures. One of these is a concept called tensor networks, which some might have heard of. So tensor networks were created again from the quantum physics community to help describe the quantum mechanics around us. So to help describe the same complexity that quantum computing is looking to solve. So we use that again to map correlations, to detect patterns, to find trends which others may not be able to see. We find that as a very exciting space to apply this technology.
Yeah, but thanks, Vishal. And I think we talk about Q-Day. It's quantum now. So as you're mentioning, Vishal, that you don't need necessarily to connect to a quantum computer today to get some of these benefits. So we're really talking about how can we apply them. Even now, where those killer apps will come from, they can be enhanced and powered later on when you can access the physical hardware. But there's still plenty to be done today. Robin, you got one for us?
Yeah, I mean, again, in practical sense, I mean, we're working with you guys also, but we calculated that we should at least be able, we need buy and sell signals, right? We're a hedge fund, that's what we need. But when do we buy, when do we sell? First of all, we need to be able to identify whether it should be a buy or a sell in the first place. The second, we should be able to identify it as soon as possible in order to generate more alpha. We calculated that we should be able to at least generate 10% more alpha if we can enhance the speed a little bit. And that's obviously where quantum comes in, speed, and obviously more correlation. So maybe we can find correlations that are not visible to the eye today that we can use to get a buy or sell signal that other people or other hedge funds don't get yet. And we can offer superior service to our clients. That's in the end more relevant.
Is it the case that just a curious question, I don't know the answer, is it the case that a very marginal improvement in the speed gets you a disproportionate improvement on the returns?
Yeah.
100%, right? So very little can have a huge impact.
Yeah, I think what excites me, and I'm not new to finance, but I'm relatively new to quantum, is that yes, we can get some improvements and we can save on compute power, but it's actually the ability to do something in a completely different way. It's a significant change, and it's one of those disruptive events that it's difficult to see where it's going to take us, which is why it requires a little bit of imagination. In my past, I did a lot of pricing for derivatives. You might ask, what's that doing for the world? Well, if you can price the derivatives correctly, if you can understand how a bank needs to manage its capital correctly, you provide more energy, it's a more efficient use of capital across the whole financial system, and it enables more products, and eventually that will become more efficient and quicker. I'd just like to, again, push it down the panel and be thinking about how collaboration really helps. So thinking about whether that's from the past or in the future, where coming together within finance can really drive the adoption of quantum technologies. I think it's difficult in finance. Collaboration was not a word that you would have used 20 years ago, even 5 or 10 years ago in finance. But as I mentioned before, with open banking, it's really happening. This is how we really drive the industry forward. Alex, maybe I'll go to you first just to talk a little bit about what's in the ventures portfolio. I know you're always pushing us as Qubitra to work with some of with the other companies, but your experience and lessons from collaboration in FS.
You are part, I used the word earlier, and it's sort of overused. You're part of the ecosystem, and that ecosystem really, every bit of it, every little fish in the ocean is supposed to make sense in its own right, but it makes a lot more sense when you put it all together. And so the power of ecosystems is remarkable. It's remarkable because you allow market forces and creativity forces to decide how to allocate resources and what to do as opposed to central planning or the senior guys that are good at it. And so to us, that ecosystem, which obviously is hinging on cooperation of different parties, is the way we get to answers. And ultimately, we're allowing partners, the market, clients, and commercial anchors, co-founders, funding, co-investors. We allow that ecosystem of partners to decide whether something makes sense or doesn't. And this is the way to get to the right answer as opposed to us all by ourselves, which will never work.
Yeah, I think that there's the key element there of in sort of early stage companies with product market fit. What you're doing there is you're getting a community validation rather than doing it within your own four walls. So I think collaboration there drives a shared use case, but also helps sort of cross-pollination of ideas. Maybe Steve, just to think about in terms of quantum, and even on the security side, how collaboration supports.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to kind of go back to history. I don't know if Vishal remembers this, but Vishal, I was his customer, and we were trying out, and I think experimentation was good because what we did was we brought quantum physicists together with report people, together with the business and the people that worked this together. And you can't get this done independently of anything. So it's really around bringing the diverse resources together, understanding what needs to happen, and then experimenting. And nobody knew the answer. And I can tell you, if somebody tells you they know the answer, they're full of it. Nobody knows the answer on how to work. This is all new technology. It is quantum inspired, and so we're using classical systems to try to think how quantum works. Once you develop these algorithms, once those computers get better, then that's when you're going to really see the value. And so it's creating that muscle memory of developing algorithms that maybe today might give you a bit of speed up, but we're hoping in the future will give you quadratic or even exponential speed up, possibly. So I think the magic really happens is bringing different type of skills together. Quantum physicists, report people, it gets very complex. And making that magic happen and seeing that value go up and you build an algorithm. And what happens? As these qubits get better, as the hardware gets better, that algorithm that you built will get much better, and you'll be ahead of the game versus other people that are waiting to when quantum is here. If you're waiting till when quantum's here, I always use the analogy, it's like running a marathon. It's like showing up the day of a marathon and just start running. You're not going to perform well. It's all the training, all the things you have to do before to gain that muscle memory to take advantage of this technology.
You picked on a passion of mine, which is running. And when you're training and when you run the marathon, it's a lot easier when you do it in a team or in a group. And I think that sort of collaboration is very important. I know, Steve, you do work in education, and I think especially within financial services, trying to get that education upwards, trying to make sure that there isn't so much fear, and there is opportunity there as well, and people understand, through a bank or even through any other financial services company, how to use this new technology and how to harness it.
Well, let me give you guys some, so I do consulting, and I'm going to do some free consulting. If you want to win and get sponsorship, you get sponsorship at the top. Especially in quantum, don't go to middle management, do a POC, and then try to work your way up and try to convince everybody you did something great. you need to educate your senior management. Senior management board people will buy education before they'll buy quantum, right? And so if you educate them and use courses like Professor Will Oliver from MIT, he's got 5 courses at MIT, which are incredibly, actually, this is where I learned about quantum, is educate the management. Because what happens, they'll tell the difference between hype and what's real. They'll get motivated and they'll get excited. And they're going to be the ones pushing you to say, hey, why don't we look at some optimization? Why don't we look at value at risk? Why don't we look at stress testing? Why don't we look at these use cases? Once you have that support at the top, it makes getting money, getting funding, and access to this machines a lot easier. So my suggestion is don't get frustrated and try to just get a POC at the bottom. Focus on getting executive support, and it'll make that journey a lot easier.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. For someone that's been previously in enterprise sales, selling at the enterprise level to financial services companies is extremely tough. But we're very lucky to have one of our clients, We Trust Capital Management, on the panel with us. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find adoption in those little pockets and to spread that learning and that knowledge. Standard Chartered and most other banks and a number of corporates have innovation teams. So perhaps before the pure funding side, getting the innovation teams that perhaps have less barriers. They're the ones that will enable you to get that senior sign-off. But that's often a really good place to start. And we look forward to bringing everybody in to our platform to be able to experiment a little bit. Robin, just give you a chance maybe to talk about collaboration, perhaps especially on the crowdfunding side.
Yeah, maybe not the crowd, but I mean, in general, I invest in a lot of companies, and what you see, especially in the innovative space, there's not a dominant design yet on how the value chain works, not always at least. And also for the companies themselves, sometimes they start as an IP company and they want to license IP, and then all of a sudden they become a contractor or a service provider in the end because that's a much better fit for. And I think collaborating also defines what role you want to play that you don't know yet when you start, because it's really hard because the design is not there. So you need to collaborate with other partners, seeing like, hey, where am I? What's my specialty compared to the other players at the table? And you need to be at the right table, obviously, also to get the top knowledge from a certain industry and a sector. So yeah, collaboration always key. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. To understand the edge that you have, the difference that you bring, and then find people to complete that. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question, feel free to organise it. We'll come to you in a minute. But I must let Michel have a word. He's the CEO of Qubitra.
No, just on the collaboration point, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on history. So big technology advances in the computing industry and otherwise have had collaboration at its core, right? Like the most recently we saw how AI is taking this exponential takeoff, but a lot of that is driven by this attention is all you need paper, which came out from Google, and other companies kind of built up upon that, right? Same thing kind of happened with the mobile ecosystems of Apple and Android and others, where people built on this ecosystem of collaborative innovation to drive value and adoption of value in society. The quantum industry is still maturing, and I think that collaborative innovation is required to accelerate both the technical level and the business adoption level. I think it helps both from a technical innovation perspective because it gives you views in areas that you're not that familiar with and gives you input to drive things forward. And it allows people to, as a technology company, at my previous company, we had a lot of great technology, but we didn't know how to apply it, right? Because we didn't have the domain expertise across different industries. So we've got some expertise in finance, but we don't know anything about shipping, or we don't know anything about aerospace. But this can allow, like the platform that we're developing, can allow people to exchange ideas and exchange value and create software that can be multi-purpose across industries by bringing in the expertise from across the ecosystem. So that's kind of the value of the platform.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. I'll give the panel a chance for some final thoughts in a minute, but did I see a hand up earlier? I'll take the mic.
Thank you so much, Michelle, everyone. I'm Nitesh. I'm also working on an AI platform where we are trying to reduce the workforce from a company. So right now, I would like to understand that we have discussed about quantum where it meets finance from a perspective of a user or a person who is investing. But we haven't touched anywhere where, how it will help a government. Basically, how it will reduce or maybe help a government, maybe in terms of taxes or in terms of, how your firm maybe help a government to reduce or maybe, increase their tax flow.
Okay. If anyone got a...
I can start and hand it over to you. You're never going to do that. So, yeah.
I promise you.
Maybe not taxes, but just general efficiency in government, I think, is something that we can help with. So, look, the applications that we build, the building blocks of those, we'll put on the platform, and we'll give others directions on how they can use those building blocks to build applications of their own. That may be in sort of operational efficiency in government. It may be in other industries as well. So that's kind of the core purpose of it.
For me, I think it's be careful what you wish for, because if the government was going to, for tax purposes, leverage quantum computing, they'd be looking at hidden patterns, being able to analyze all of your transactional data and find out the taxes that you're not paying. But I think more importantly, what we see from government is funding. So, in a frontier technology such as quantum, they're the ones that are funding some of the build of the hardware. They're the ones that are giving grant funding, even in financial services, but in all other industries as well. And the more funding, the more innovation, the more funding, and it goes on in a virtuous circle. There's a question over there.
I'm very well aware of how hard it is to get funding for something when you make it open source, because the argument that open source is free but expertise is not doesn't go very well with venture corporatists, which is the correct term. That said, I think with the technology you're talking about, the applications are so broad. You said it yourself a moment ago that you're not from shipping, you're not from a military background, you're not from an aeronautics background. All of these things have specific requirements, specific needs. Would you think about moving this to an open source state when you've got to a position where you can legitimately ring fence it somewhat in the same way that we have with blockchain, Red Hat have with databases?
That's a great question. I feel like open source has really driven a lot of industries forward. So with our platform, we won't, it will be kind of both open to open source and to proprietary technology. So those that are happy to open source their technology can come on the platform, allow others to adopt it and drive that forward, which I think is important in driving collaboration and advancing different industries for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for this panel. My question is, what data sets are you using to develop the algorithms and test them? And to piggyback on the other gentleman's question about public sector, if you consider using that data since it's publicly available
So we use markets data. So we use publicly available data, markets data. So our, let's say, secret sauce is not so much in esoteric data sets that we get access to. It's finding new patterns in data sets that everyone has access to but can't see. There's so much data that's out there, but we can see things differently because of a different lens.
I think just to mention one important element of the vision of Qubitra, which is why Standard Chartered and Fujitsu came together to make it happen, is to democratize access to quantum software. So we do start in financial services, but the platform is open to the hardware providers, it's open to quantum enthusiasts, it's open to the innovation teams that we mentioned before, to really come on the platform and to collaborate and to develop those algorithms. We'll have our own, as Qubitra, we have our own science team that are doing the same. But it's really about just opening access and driving adoption. Did I see a question on this side? Anyone else want to speak?
This is really a question for Steve. What's the role of key distribution, quantum key distribution in your killer app?
Well, it's funny because you always have the fighting between the mathematicians, which is PQC, and the quantum physicists that tell you we need to use QKD. Just for the people who don't know, is just PQC are algorithms. They're actually not quantum, even though it has the word quantum in it. They're classical algorithms that have been proven well, we believe, nothing's been 100% proven, we believe that they're immune to the quantum computers and to Shor's algorithm. And NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, have put out these algorithms to use. And so they're telling organizations to start leveraging those algorithms. So those are using classical methods. You're able to implement it. And if you have an iPhone, guess what? You're protected. It's Apple put out PQ3, Zoom put out stuff. But the reality is we're going to have the largest upgrade in human history. I think the World Economic Forum put out a paper saying that there's 20 billion devices that will need to get upgraded. And so when you say that, I'm not trying to tell you that to scare you. I'm telling you that to be, there's a market opportunity that this is going to be an upgrade. We're going to need people to do it. We're going to need software. We're going to need platforms. And guess what? The technology's out there. QKD, which what you brought up, is using quantum mechanics to be able to protect. And that one's a little bit harder because you need hardware. You need to be able to send data. And because of quantum has this thing called the no cloning issue, the farthest you can send it is maybe 100 kilometers through fiber. And that's why people are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put a chip in a payload, send it up in a satellite, and then line of sight. So there's a lot of different things, and it's very hard because once you take the data out there, then you have to take it into a non-quantum state, and that defeats the purpose. So the reality is right now, PQC, I think, is the interest. QKD is more research and farther down. I wouldn't suggest anybody to say, hey, I'm going to go implement QKD. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's an opportunity, but it's nothing you should be don't say invest. Nothing you should be putting your money that you're going to get an ROI anytime soon.
I think Michelle wants to add.
Just on the QKD point, I wanted to add something because it reminded me of a conversation I had yesterday. You meet some really interesting people here at Davos, and one of this lady was she's running a company which is a brain-computer interface, right? So, and what that was doing is looking at information from your brain and storing it into a computer. And she said, I need a way to really be secure about this. PQC, PQC she knows about, but what is the absolute gold standard, right? And QKD in many ways is, right? It's harder to implement at larger scale, longer distances, but that could be a potential thing where the shelf life of that is forever.
Yeah. Well, I think if you want to break that encryption, you need to be able to break the laws of quantum mechanics. And so if you can break the laws of quantum mechanics, then you can break that encryption.
Good luck. Thank you. I think we're just about running out of time, but I'll give the panel a chance just to give a final thought each. I mentioned earlier that I prefer being driven by excitement than fear, but I think FOMO, fear of missing out, is a key driver. So when we get headlines that your data or your security is at threat, or you see that IBM and HSBC have cracked market making in bonds, it does drive, get your attention. It drives people to fund these new technologies. So if anyone has FOMO that they didn't ask a question, please ask the panel afterwards, and let's go down from Robin with just a quick minute of final thoughts.
Maybe not a thought, but I'm not a quantum guy per se. I'm an end user, so you will. So just from an end user perspective, how do you define in the end, like going forward a bit, like where's the line between AI and quantum? Like, do they merge completely, or are they going to be separate worlds other than just the hardware software component? Maybe someone can shed some light on this.
Happy to add a bit of color, and then we can others can as well. I think it's a very symbiotic relationship. So I think AI will help the design of better quantum computers. So the management of errors and the design of new chips and the design of management of data and architectures. There's that relationship. And absolutely, quantum will help the design and implementation of better AI systems. And they kind of go well together. Quantum gives you the ability to look at, as I said, correlations better, look at better learning, daily training intervals. So it kind of integrates quite nicely from that.
Will there be non-quantum AI in 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Some data sets and some problems are better solved and will always be better solved with non-quantum approaches. But
the hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. That's why hybrid is so important.
And Alex and Steve, any concluding thoughts?
You want me to take it? You can have a thought, or are you ready to go? Listen, I deal in FOMO. So one of the things I deal in FOMO is getting companies to compete against each other. If you want to know who's leading in quantum computing, go to the quantumindex.com. There you can see who's leading in automotive, financial services, life sciences, and energy. We're probably going to put in telecom, material services. Part of it is I want to go out to the markets and kind of see kind of who's leading. But if I were to give you a word of advice, and this is what I did in my career, if you don't know about quantum, you want to know about quantum, empower yourself, educate yourself. It is a plug, but it's serious feedback. We have a class at MIT, which is Quantum Strategy and Impact. That's really a short class, kind of taking the fluff out of what you need to do as an executive on how do you apply this technologies, what it is, what it isn't, and where and how to put a strategy together. Because waiting is not a strategy. And so when I say go empower yourself, educate yourself, don't make decisions because somebody told you X, Y, and Z, and then start spreading that, because that's not making decisions from a point of knowledge. Go educate yourself first, and then come up with your own conclusions.
Well, and building on Steve's, there's really two ways to learn. One is MIT, and a couple of other ones, other minor ones, and the other one is to get onto something and do it. And so while we're here to engage, because we've established that we're not doing this ourselves, and that any venture that is monochromatic is by the way, we have that data as well. Any monochromatic thing we've created failed, and only the ones that have been able to harness the intellectual capital of very different actors have had a very good shot. And so we're here to engage. And so the encouragement is to engage with the platform and learn by doing, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex, and thanks to all of the panel. It was great to hear some thoughts from different backgrounds, and really, as Alex mentioned, this is about trying. It's about trying. Sometimes about collaborating, about learning, really about driving the industry forward. Quantum is early. AI is early. I think that for me, the link AI has come on so much, but we're just scratching the surface. I think we have the same with quantum. Personally, I think we even have the same in distributed ledger technology. It's come on so much, and these are the early parts of the trends. Now is the time to go and educate yourselves, to understand it more, and to think about those real-world use cases. So thank you to all of the panel, and thanks for the questions from the audience, and we'll talk to you afterwards.